Hey guys, it's Anthony here with TweakTown, and we're going to be talking to you about the world of technology in the last week or so. We're going to start off with news from Nvidia that the company is launching a brand new video card in the next month or so. We don't know if they're going to be doing it definitely, it's just a rumor right now, but it looks like they might be launching a new video card into the mid-range market with the GeForce GTX 960. Now you might remember a couple months ago Nvidia flew out a bunch of press to Monterey Bay in California and they launched the Maxwell architecture. So they launched the new GeForce GTX 980 and the GeForce GTX 970, and they also showed us the much lower power use of the 980 and 970M, the mobile versions of the Maxwell desktop counterparts. But now it looks like they're going to be launching a mid-range GPU, which is actually going to be pretty good. The video card in question is obviously the GeForce GTX 960. It looks like it's going to be a very power efficient card with power draw between like maybe 100 and 120 watts with a maximum power TDP of 150 watts. So you're not talking about much power at all. Even an SLI build, full power from the entire system with less than 400 or 500 watts, which is great. It looks like it's going to keep up, at least with the GeForce GTX 970. It'll obviously be slower, but it's going to keep up maybe within 10-20% of the performance. We don't know if it's going to have a 192 or a 256-bit memory bus. Probably the 256-bit. Maybe Nvidia want to stay competitive against AMD, who are also rumored to be launching a new video card in that time, which will probably arrive in the form of like a Radeon R9 380X or 390X. No one knows yet. But that's what the rumors have been saying for the last couple of months. Continuing with Nvidia news, the company actually unveiled that it's working with Google on Project R. So if you don't know what Project R is the modular smartphone technology from Google. So instead of having a smartphone which has like an SoC and it has all the other like RAM and a camera module and battery, this phone is made from little, kind of like Lego parts, where you can actually build your own device. So you might want to have a bigger battery, so you'll choose to put a bigger battery in it. You might want to not maybe use the front-facing camera. Like for someone like me, I probably wouldn't use the front-facing camera at all. So you'd be able to take it out, and you'd be able to maybe use that space for something else. You might want additional storage or an SD card slot, or you might want a bigger rear-facing camera, or you might want a high-resolution screen, or you might want a faster processor, which takes up more space. So it's a pretty incredible technology that Google will be pushing out next year. Hopefully sometime next year, no one knows when. But Nvidia and Marvel have announced that they're actually making chips for Project R and the prototype devices. Nvidia are actually making the Tegra K1 processor for Project R, which is their 64-bit processor, which is going to be pretty impressive because it has a GeForce GPU inside. So you're going to be able to choose to buy an Nvidia product. So it might be a new market that Nvidia might be able to get into, apart from selling just an SoC to companies to put into their devices, like the HTC made Nexus 9 from Google. If Nvidia are able to do this and put faster and faster chips in there, you'll be able to decide what you want. You might want to buy the $50 module that might be X faster. You might buy the $100 module might be Y faster. You might go right up to the top and spend much more money, and go to maybe a super like a proper GPU that might have whatever cores in the future. It's exciting stuff. So supposedly from what we've written on the news, the first generation of the Project R devices, or the first kind of proper prototypes, are using a Toshiba UniPro Bridge ASIC for their Project R Spiral 2 prototype handsets. And these are compatible with a Marvel chip, which has graphics, graphics, the broadband chip for 2G, 3G, and all that kind of stuff, and the 4-core CPU. Nvidia's Tegra K1 is being used, so you're actually getting 4 Cortex cores, A15s, 2 Nvidia Project Denver cores, which are the 64-bit capable ones, and a GeForce chip on there with 72 Kepler cores, or stream processors, I should say. But that won't have baseband capability. So again, you'll buy maybe the Nvidia chip, and you'll hook that into your Project R smartphone, and then you might buy a baseband chip. So not everyone wants to have 4G. You might just go for 3G. That might be a little bit cheaper, and then you'll just use Wi-Fi. So we should be seeing these smartphones enter the market hopefully in the first half of next year. We'll be bringing you all the news because it's going to be one of the most exciting launches of next year. Talking about exciting launches, Sony actually teased its PlayStation 5 console. So the PlayStation 4 came out just a year ago, I think in October 2013. and Sony are already discussing the PlayStation 5. I think we talked about this in our gaming podcast yesterday, but we're just going to be talking more about the cloud services and a little bit more detail on hopefully what the PlayStation 5 might be. So we talked about it in the game podcast. If you haven't watched that, grab that on our website. It's up at the top. You'll see podcast. Just click that and have a listen to Chris and I from yesterday. We're talking about all things games and including the PlayStation 5. But it looks like Sony might be doing the PlayStation 5 a little bit differently. So without doubling up on what we said yesterday, Sony have talked about the PlayStation 5 not knowing what it'll be when it's here. So maybe it'll be a physical console, maybe it'll be in the cloud, maybe it'll be somewhere in between. When Chris and I were talking yesterday, I thought it would be somewhere in between. I believe that maybe Sony might do a lot of the offload the processing and the rendering of the games on the cloud, and then push it down to you. So a lot of people, we had a couple of comments, and I think I even had an email asking or saying that they think that the internet access and the internet infrastructure around the world isn't capable of sustaining the PlayStation 5 with all these massive games. But if you think about it, Sony owned Gaikai, which they bought a couple of years ago for a couple of $100 million. They might have done something there and able to work out their compression or an encryption algorithm where instead of these games being 50 gig, you might do a 5 gig download, and then the game progressively downloads as you're playing it. So you might have to preload. Say the game's a 50 gig Blu-ray standard. You might download a 5 gig download, and that initial download might be enough for you to play the game. And then as you play it, it's streaming it. So it would give you, say, 5 gig might be enough for 15% of the game. So then while you're playing that 15%, if you go through 3 or 4 or 5%, it starts downloading another percent or two. So it could work. I think Sony, if they were to do that, they could do the rendering on the internet and you wouldn't experience lag because the game is still running on your PC. So you don't need to worry, on your PlayStation 5, sorry. You don't need to worry about the lag between the render online and the render in your console. You're just offloading it to the console because it knows what it's going to render. It's rendering the game or just spitting down the image back down to you. So it would work almost in the way that if people remember how you had a time demo in the original Quake, or it would spit out a file that was only kilobytes big, and that you would just replay that and then it would render in the engine. So if they were able to do that some way, Sony could really knock it out of the park. And I think that's why you're seeing both Sony and Microsoft concentrate more on the cloud now, because I think they're realizing just how much potential is there. Sure, you might not stream full games, but you're going to be streaming something from the cloud eventually. I'm excited. The PlayStation 4 didn't do anything for me. The Xbox One didn't do anything for me, but I'm always excited about the next one, just to see how far they push things. It was interesting to see Sony adopt DDR or GDDR5 memory into their PlayStation 4. They've got more internal bandwidth between the CPU and the GPU on the APU, which is an AMD built APU. It'll be interesting to see what they do with the PS5, but we probably won't know that for at least another 6 to 12 months. I'm hoping that we don't have another 7 or 8 or 10 year console cycle. I'm hoping that we see maybe Sony unveil it next year, release it in 2016, or even release it next year. They're going to have to compete with Valve and Steambox and the likes of Half-Life 3 when Valve releases it. We know that it's coming. I doubt that Valve are not making it. You pretty much have to be naive and stupid to think that they're not going to make a sequel to one of the most successful games of all time. So I think that Valve and Sony, Microsoft and Sony are going to have to better compete against the likes of Valve, which is going to be someone completely out of the realm of that wasn't a possibility 5 years ago. Moving on. Android 6.0 is already starting to get talked about. So we had Android 5.0 Lollipop only a couple of months ago released, and over the last couple of weeks it's been rolling out to various devices like the HTC One M8, the Galaxy S5, the Nexus 6, Moto X, 2014 edition. But now we're hearing about Android 6.0. So Android 6.0 is going to be Android 6.0 M. Obviously, we had Android 5.0 L for Lollipop, and then we're going to have Android 6.0 or Android M, depending on what you want to call it. We don't know anything about Android M. All we know that we're going to see Android 5.1 before we see Android 6.0. So we should see Android 6.0 probably better forming, maybe second quarter of next year. And then we'll most likely see it completely unveiled at Google I/O, which is Google's annual developer conference in June or July 2015. Other than that, we don't know what it's going to include, what it's going to do better than Lollipop or KitKat. We know nothing on it. All we know is that it's coming, obviously, and this was the first tease of it. So we don't know what it's, obviously with Android L, we didn't know if it was going to be Lollipop or Key Lime Pie, but now people are starting to guess on what Android M stands, or the M in Android M stands for. So it could be Milky Way, Milky Bar, Marshmallow. I'm guessing maybe the latter, probably called Android Marshmallow, but we don't know yet. Samsung, speaking about handset manufacturers, Samsung actually have shown off a curved 34-inch ultra wide, or super wide as they call it, 21:9 aspect ratio monitor. So for the last week or so, or last 2 weeks, I just sent it back yesterday, I had LG's 34UC97, their 34-inch ultra wide curved 21:9 LCD. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. $1,700-ish, $1,600, depending on where you buy it from. One of the best monitors I've ever used. I'm now sitting back in front of my default. This is an Asus ROG Swift 1440p 144Hz Nvidia G-Sync screen. And to my right, I have the Acer XB280HK, which is the 4K G-Sync, 60Hz. And I love them. I'm addicted to G-Sync. I think it's great for games, but the alluring 21:9 34-inch monitor, that thing is amazing. For productivity, I sit in front of monitors all day, pretty much, as many hours as I can without being interrupted by family, and I've got 2 kids in the house, and going out to do grocery shopping, normal life stuff. I sit in front of my computer, and the curved monitor was amazing. I absolutely loved it. It was really hard to send it back, very, very hard to send it back. But now we're hearing Samsung is doing the same thing, the following suit with their own curved monitor. So I'm really excited to see what Samsung do. It doesn't look like it's going to be as good as the LG, because LG actually used an IPS panel. So the colors and the clarity of the LG were just perfect. It was beautiful to look at. The colors were crisp and nice, and they popped. The quality of the text was perfect. The curve, like the viewing angle was nice. Not that you look at it on, obviously on an angle, but it's still there. So Samsung's monitor is the SE70C, and we're looking at the Ultra WQHD resolution of 3440 by 1440. We're going to have viewing angle of 178 degrees, contrast ratio of 3000 to 1. And we're looking at having picture-in-picture capabilities, as well as what have we got here? As well as 7-watt stereo speakers, which is going to be pretty good, and obviously USB 3.0 supercharging ports, which should be nice. Samsung are probably going to be selling it in 2015 sometime, so probably the first quarter, I'm guessing. They should be ready with them. We don't know what price, but I'm guessing probably over $1,500. Probably to stay in line with the LG. Continuing with monitors, Chris reported a couple of days ago that an Australian retailer called Kogan, I don't think they ship overseas, but they are offering a 24-inch monitor, a full HD 24-inch monitor, so 1920 by 1080, 144 Hz for $199 Australian. So that's about 170-ish right now US, which is just amazing for a 24-inch 144 Hz screen. When I first read the news that Chris wrote, I thought that would be perfect for a triple screen setup. $600 or less in the US for a triple screen setup with 144 Hz is not unheard of. Normally, 144 Hz screens are much more expensive than that. The screen itself comes with Kogan have something they call Pro Eye technology, so it's going to help you for longer periods of time sitting there gaming, which is something you're going to do with a 144 Hz screen. Let's be honest. You've got 2 2-watt speakers, a standard D-sub, HDMI as well, and the usual screws that you get. So the monitor is priced at under $30 less than what it normally is. So even at $229, it's still a great value screen. We haven't tested one yet, obviously, but for that price, that's something that you probably want to grab. $199 is amazing. Speaking about bargains, HP have just added another laptop to their lineup of Chromebooks. So they've got a Chromebook lineup that has a couple of models now. The main one in question is the Chromebook 14, which is a 14-inch notebook based on Google's Chrome OS, and it has a 1366 by 768 panel. It's one of the downsides of it. They've just unveiled very quietly, they didn't really push this at all, a brand new Chromebook 14 Touch. So where the Chromebook 14 Touch differ is the Chromebook 14, like I said before, has a 1366 by 768 resolution on its 14-inch panel, where the new Chromebook 14 Touch ups that to 1080p as well as giving it touch capabilities. That's a huge jump for the price that they offer, considering that the new Chromebook 14 Touch is only $440 US. That's pretty damn good, considering that you're getting a 14-inch touchscreen device with a full HD display. So a lot of these laptops these days are only coming with 1366 by 768, which these days is pathetic. You know, smartphones have 2560 by 1440 resolution panels. I don't think we should be seeing anything under full HD these days, but there you go. Nvidia are actually powering the new Chromebook 14 Touch as well with their Tegra K1 chip. Considering that you get that and you're getting a 14-inch touchscreen, that's amazing. So if you're a late Christmas present, or maybe you want to purchase a New Year's present or a birthday present, $440 is not too bad at all. Check that out, definitely. We had a tease during the week that Seagate will be releasing a 10 terabyte hard drive, So the biggest that we get right now in the consumer world is about 4 terabytes. You can get 6 and 8, but they're not really feasible in terms of price. But Seagate are going to be releasing a 10 terabyte hard drive next year. They're going to be using their shingled magnetic recording technology, or SMR, and also as well as, or they're hoping. So after the SMR technology comes in with their 10 terabyte hard drives, they're hoping to shift over to heat-assisted magnetic recording, which is HAMR. But the new Seagate 10 terabyte hard drive is going to be using 1.66 terabyte SMR platters in order to get to 10 terabytes. So the company said that the performance won't be that great, but I don't know what not that great means. Maybe is it 30% slower than what the 4 terabyte is? We don't know yet, but you can be sure that our storage guys, Chris Ramsayer, will be hitting that up as soon as Seagate send us one. 2 more stories to wind up this pre-Christmas podcast. It is 4:16 p.m. here in Australia. Christmas Day is in 8 hours, which is just unbelievable. How fast has this year gone? Really? Like, wow. Anyway, Apple rumored to be launching a 12-inch MacBook Air next year. So we've already got a couple of MacBook Air models, a couple of MacBooks, a couple of MacBook Pros, but this new one is going to be running Intel's Intel's new CPU, the Core M processor, the Broadwell the chip. And the new processor, because of the way the power efficiency of it, we're going to be looking at something that's completely fanless, which I think the MacBook Air is, but this will just be thinner, probably increased battery life. It'll be faster, probably better, or faster CPU at least, better GPU. But we don't know anything more than that. Apple are really secretive about this, but we obviously know it's going to be fanless and thin. But the new 12-inch MacBook Pro will feature Intel's Core M processor, which is going to be a good jump. We've seen my favorite laptop range is Lenovo's Yoga 2 Pro range. I run a Yoga 2 Pro myself. Well, not Yoga 2 Pro range, but Yoga Pro range. They just released a Yoga 3 Pro, which has a Core M processor inside of it. I think they're better than the MacBook Air. Personally, you get a touchscreen on the Windows side. You're getting more USB 3 ports and that kind of stuff. Better battery life. Considering that it's bigger and stuff like that. But if you're an Apple fan, you should be excited for that. A brand new MacBook Air is going to be great, especially with the Core M processor. You're going to have increased battery life, increased speeds and that kind of stuff. But who knows when Apple are going to do it. Suppose they're having yield issues right now. I don't know where that's coming from, whether it's going to be because of the 12-inch Retina display. Maybe they're having yield issues because they're doing something new. I'm really hoping that we see a MacBook Air with a touch screen, where you can maybe slide, and it'll have a button that you could adjust where it turns it from OS X, which is Apple's desktop operating system, to iOS, which is obviously their mobile OS. Doing something like that would be really cool because we haven't seen that before. Or we have companies like Asus do it with like all-in-one PCs where you can take it off and it has Android on it for mobile use, and then it has Windows on it when it's docked. But I'd like to see Apple use their same ecosystem, you know, stay within iOS, and then when disconnected, stay within when it's plugged in, have OS X, and when it's disconnected, have iOS. Because then you wouldn't, you know, but then you'd be stepping on the iPad toes. So we'll see how that goes. The last story for today, for our short Happy Christmas kind of podcast, is Samsung has announced that they're making, they're starting the production of the very first 8 gigabit LPDDR4 RAM. So LPDDR4, if you didn't know what that stands for, it's low profile, low power. Sorry. So the new low power DDR RAM is going to be built into smartphones. So we should be seeing Samsung release new smartphones with this. We've just got a story that's gone live today, a couple of hours before I record it, or a couple of hours before this started recording, that Samsung have announced the Galaxy S6 will have 4 gig of RAM. So we're most likely going to be seeing Samsung bake in the new LPDDR4 into their Galaxy S6. So Galaxy S6 is probably going to have a QHD panel, so 2560 by 1440, and 4 gig of RAM, which is just, I'm pretty sure it's the first time a smartphone has had 4 gig of RAM. The new LPDDR4 from Samsung is going to have a massive performance improvement as well, especially because of the new screens that they're coming out. They're going to be Ultra HD, so 4K. So they're going to be using more power, and you've got bigger cameras now that are snapping more photos at once, like with constant photos being taken, or for Ultra HD video, 4K video. This new RAM is going to be able to do multitasking a lot better. So people ask, why do they not have that much RAM? Why do you need that much RAM? Well, think about it. The iPhone 6 Plus only has 1 gig of RAM, but it only has an 8 megapixel rear-facing camera, so it only records 1080p video. They haven't gone to even 1440p yet, let alone 4K. That could be one of the reasons why Apple have stayed at 1 gig for all this, pretty much for the last couple of generations, where Samsung seems to be shifting right into 8 gig DDR4 chips, which will obviously filter right down to mobile. Interesting times. CES is in a week. Now that we're wrapped up, CES is in a week. I'm going to be doing probably another couple of podcasts between now and then, depending on whether Chris is free. Probably discussing what I'm most looking forward to at CES. Whatever breaks during the week in terms of news, which I'm sure something will happen, but it's usually quiet between Christmas and New Year's. But I want to keep engaging with you guys. Keep the show going. Maybe do something a little bit different. Maybe keep these podcasts shorter. It's only 20 minutes. It's easy for you guys to watch. If there's anything that you guys want to see talked about, let us know in the comments. Thank you for watching.